Today, we're gonna try and see if this launch deck from Takoon is actually any good. Now, I've never used anything like this, and I also have to admit that I'm not the best drop starter ever. I'm so used to, oh, this thing is going away. I'm so used to keeping my hands on the board that it's gonna be weird, I think, for me to jump on this floating thing with my board on it. First of all, I have to figure out how to latch it to the dock. It's gonna be probably something like this. Yep. Cool. And I'm gonna start off by using the Takoon 1700 pump, just because it's the easiest foil I have available at the moment. And then eventually, if it's easy, as it's supposed to be, I'm gonna maybe perhaps try and use my faster Keto set. But let's go step by step. I am shitting my pants, to be honest. Okay, maybe I have to make sure that it's wet between the inflatable and the board, maybe perhaps. I feel like I'm not gonna put it all the way to the back. I want it to detach very easily. I was a bit scared at the beginning. I wasn't used to run and then jump on this thing. I wasn't really confident, but in actual fact, after the first jump, you really gain confidence because it's actually the right flotation. I would say like the floating deck, the floating launcher, is the right flotation to have the right balance between stability when you land on it and not being too sticky with the board. So as you could see, you kind of have to still be gentle when you land on the board, otherwise you won't transfer your this run into forward momentum. But at the same time, it kind of lets you, it kind of lets you pretty easily. Definitely for a complete beginner, I can see its potential, and definitely it removes the initial fear of jumping on the board from a high dock, for example, if you are reverse drop starting, or it removes the not being able to keep your hands on the pads all the time. I still suggest before you get on the water to practice on land a little bit. Of course, you're not going to use the actual launcher, but you can still, set the board on a, what's it called? On a carpet or on the floor or something, and then you can kind of run and step on it, jump on it, just to be consistent with the feet placement. Because now in my case, I'm experienced, so I got the feet placement right away. But it's not granted, right? If you've never dock started, if it's really like the first thing you do, then again, you probably don't know where to place your feet, and you're not going to be sharp with your feet placement. So yes, it is going to save your some time. It is gonna get you on the board faster, but still you need to practice on land first, in my opinion, where you actually are supposed to land on the board. Otherwise, you're just gonna completely fail all the time. Now, it took me 5-6 trials, and what I can tell is that one thing that you have to keep in mind if you're using the launcher and you've never done anything, or maybe even you tried some Dockstarts or something, you gotta keep your weight far back because it's very easy to nosedive. Another tip that I can give you is to really not jump high. So you shouldn't see it as a jumping on the board. You should see it as a continuing of that run. So you are running on the dock. By the way, 3-4 steps are more than enough. You can do some testing and take some measurements. It's pretty important that you detach at the right time. But again, even more important is that you don't jump higher than the board, because again, you gotta detach the board from the launcher, right? And in order to do that, you can't jump high, because if you jump high, you're just gonna land this way, and no way that you're gonna give momentum to the board. Now, I'm really curious to try it with a fast foil. I don't think it's going to be possible to start a fast foil. But for slow foils, for beginner foils like the 1700 from Takoon, it is nice because, again, it allows you to get on the board with some speed, which is not easy because especially the way people usually dock start, they take the board, right? They do something like this, they throw it, and then they jump on it, right? And I explained multiple times that, in my opinion, that's the worst way to start because you're gonna get on the board. Let's say that your feet placement is even right, but you're not gonna have speed, you're not gonna have height on the mast, and you're probably even gonna pitch the board slightly up. So you're gonna be in the worst position ever to start pumping. With the launcher, you can get on the board still with ease, and at least you're gonna have some height, not that much height on the mast, but at least you're gonna have some speed, and the board is gonna point down slightly, so you're gonna be in the right position to actually start pumping. Because again, if I throw the board and I jump on it, perhaps I can start, because I'm using a slow foil, beginner foil, and I'm experienced. I know how to pump efficiently, so I can recover from bad situations. But if you don't, and you just again throw the board and step on it, and you're not an efficient pump foiler, you're gonna have a hard time learning how to pump and give even just the first few pumps. So I'm gonna give another couple of shots with the beginner set, and then I'm gonna try my set, the faster set, and see how it goes. Again, I wasn't super sharp. I didn't have much speed when I landed on it. I think I can do better, and I had to kind of recover. I wasn't really straight, but I think with a bit of practice, you can really get on the board with a nice speed and start pumping right away without having to recover or do something. So let's give it another crack. There's absolutely no need you put some water on the inflatable, between the inflatable and the board, because it's gonna detach pretty easily. What I suggest you do though is to keep the board quite forward, and as you can see, it's even slightly pointing down, just to facilitate the detachment. Now these strings detached, which is normal, I don't know, but yeah, I feel like I don't need them, I think. But one thing that I have to mention is that if you are in a place where maybe you don't have a dock, and you only have maybe like a big concrete block, I don't know how to call it. For example, these big marinas, these big ports where big ships land. More often than not, you don't have a dock with an overhang, and that's almost impossible then to learn how to pump. And this is the only option, because as you can see, now I do have an overhang, but you don't need it, because especially if you keep the board in this position, the stab, maybe we can see it from the side here, the stabilizer is just about at the same spot where the cushion actually ends, which means that if you latch the inflatable to like a concrete wall, it still is gonna stay, and you're not gonna hit the wall every time with the stabilizer. So in some cases, this is really the only options. I'm trying to use the other hooks. Maybe it detaches a little better. I don't know. I have no idea. Or perhaps it's not like, perhaps it's the opposite. I feel like running that much is counterproductive. Because anyways, with a slow foil, you don't need speed. And with such a long run, you only run into the issue of getting there with too much energy, too much potential energy, and you don't know what to do with that energy. And you just probably nosedive, right? Or you land on the board and you're all unbalanced, because you gotta consider that the board is stationary. The board is not moving. So if you move too fast, then you're not gonna be able to transfer all that speed on the board into forward momentum. I believe that there is only so much speed that you can transfer, so much energy that you can transfer into forward momentum. After that, you're just gonna dissipate that energy and probably fall. Probably don't dive, or land in an unbalanced way. So I don't think that this is the tool to start small foils, but it's not the purpose of this tool. The purpose of this tool is to just facilitate the learning process. So I'm gonna try now with a shorter run, and in my opinion it's gonna be better. Because again, you don't need energy, you don't need speed. And again, if you have too much speed, you're just gonna have too much energy when you land on the board. One thing that I don't like too much is the size. This mast is 75, and then it's an aluminum mast like the Axis one. So once you have the base plate and the doodad underneath and everything, it's actually 79, almost 80 centimeters. So as you can see, the foil is quite low on the water, so you have very little room for mistake. You gotta land with a very precise feet placement, otherwise you're gonna touch down because you don't have much distance between the water and the board. So maybe you can adapt to it somehow, maybe you can do it a little higher, maybe I'm just not able to use it properly, and you can't, maybe, yeah, I think there should be the way to make sure that it's a bit higher, probably. So who is it for? If you are struggling, if your knees hurt, your back hurts, you cannot bend, you cannot keep your hands on the pads, and maybe you cannot even jump on the board with Dockstart, then in that case, this is pretty much the only option you have to get on the board. Or, like I said, if you don't have access to a dock with overhang and you only have these big concrete blocks or a rock, then again, that's the only option to be able to Dockstart. So it's a valuable option in that case. What I wouldn't do is probably spend 400 euros or dollars for the North one. This is half the price, I believe, or something like that, because this is a great tool to learn, but I wouldn't stick to it for the entire journey. I would use it to get on the board in the right position with some speed to facilitate the pumping learning process, all right? But I wouldn't just depend on this because you miss on so many things, right? Like, yes, it's quite compact, light, and you can pack it pretty easily, but still you have to assemble it, and just like the foil drive. I love the foil drive, but I would not only use the foil drive, right? So I believe it's not great to always depend on one tool. So I would maybe use it to get started, but I wouldn't keep it for the entire pump foiling journey, right? So again, if you are struggling, it seems like nothing is working, or again, you have some physical problems or some logistic issues, then in that case, this is a valuable option, all right? So that is it. This was my review, my unfiltered review. I'm not gonna stick to it personally because I'm a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 Dockstarter, so I don't really feel the need of it. But again, if you're a beginner and you are struggling, this could probably unstuck your situation. All right, see you in the next one.